What led me to healing is the understanding of life when I was at crossroads. So just as a context, I've been a student of management and psychology, and studying psychology took me also to certain realms which are outside the framework of conventional psychology, which talk about invisible forces that actually manifest in your life. For example, energy.
You speak a lot about energy and about energy healing. What is this energy? How can people watching this really understand what this energy is?
We are all human beings who have thoughts and emotions. But these thoughts and emotions generate electrical impulses in our body, based on which we have certain physical symptoms, because certain chemicals are also generated in our body.
And who can come to you?
Actually, it's people of all types, anyone and everyone. And the reason is because we talk of stress nowadays, that everything is related to stress. And stress, by definition, is an emotional reaction or a response. When something is not in my control, when something I'm scared would happen. And that affects me with a physical symptom. So when you look at it in a holistic way, mental, emotional, it could be a deep-rooted belief or an experience that is holding you back from what you do. And it's a matter of identifying, addressing it, and then bringing about the alignment, because in a natural way, we are made to heal.
Welcome to Conversations with Alanki. Today's episode will be slightly different from all the conversations that I usually have. It might be thought-provoking and intriguing. So the guest in my show today speaks about energy healings, changing your aura and mindfulness. Now the guest in my show today is Archana Law. She's the founder of ACOM, and she also specializes in alternative healing and mindfulness. She's the founder of ACOM, and she's a certified executive coach, HR professional with expertise in psychometrics and life skills training. She's passionate about helping people and businesses grow and thrive, and she has coached many leaders from many organizations. Now, ACOM adopts a holistic approach, combining modern science with Eastern wisdom, and really helps you reach your potential. What is this energy? How do you change your aura? And how do you really tap into this energy? To find out all of this, let me first welcome Archana Law. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Archana, tell me about your background in healing. How many years have you been doing this, and most importantly, why?
A very good question. So first of all, thank you for having me here on your show and giving me the time. I've been into healing as long as I can remember. That's half my life. 32 years to be exact, so you know my age now. And what led me to healing is the understanding of life when I was at crossroads. So just as a context, I've been a student of management and psychology. Started off teaching English literature at a college in Mumbai. And my studies in psychology were very fascinating. They helped me to understand what makes us tick, why we do things the way we do, and what is this all about. And studying psychology took me also to certain realms which are outside the framework of conventional psychology, which talk about invisible forces that actually manifest in your life. For example, energy. So I was also at one point of time doing some research on the subject with a gentleman from Jaipur University. Unfortunately, didn't see the light of day, but that was enough to get me deeper and deeper into this subject. So I started dabbling into it, some self-learned, a lot of it learned by certification from renowned and reputed teachers from all over the world. And yes, it's been a fascinating journey, but that helps me to bring together my own experiences with a scientific base in a holistic way to help people, and of course my own self.
So Archana, that brings me to my next question. You speak a lot about energy and about energy healing. What is this energy? How can people watching this really understand what this energy is?
Again, a very good question, and I think the basics of what I do. So, in a scientific way, we are all human beings who have thoughts and emotions, right? Which comes first is still being debated and discussed. But these thoughts and emotions generate electrical impulses in our body, based on which we have certain physical symptoms because certain chemicals are also generated in our body. Think of somebody who dreads public speaking. What would be going on in the mind of that person? What would that make that person feel nervous and maybe even going blank, even though the person is well rehearsed? An athlete who does not feel confident even though he or she has the skill and talent and capability. Think of a doctor who has a very, very close relative to treat, and what that person might be feeling, the anxiety that might come in, that might cloud the objectivity, might bring in a lot of subjectivity. So we are talking about energy, which is invisible like electricity around us, but it can be high voltage or low voltage. So we can have bursts of high energy depending on how we think and feel, and we can feel low and really, lethargic physically, as well as a bit depressed and miserable. All this together is energy. So when we talk of energy, and I believe in a holistic approach, it's actually combining all of these elements. It's not compartmentalizing. So it is talking about healing mentally, which is, and healing as in addressing and then rectifying a certain issue or a thinking pattern, which is creating a kind of a self-sabotage within, which is saying, I'm not good enough, that has to be replaced. It could be an emotional trauma that the person has experienced, which is still there, lurking behind. And in your mind, in the depths of somewhere in your mind and subconscious, which needs to be addressed, identified, addressed, and then surfaced to be healed. Right? So it could be something that reflects in your work, it could be something that reflects in your life or in your relationships, including with yourself.
All right. So if a person comes to you and this individual has emotional trauma or an emotional block or whatever you may call it, how do you know what needs addressing?
Right. So again, allow me to share an example. So there's this girl who's now graduating with flying colors. But I remember when she first came to me, I'm just coming to the crux of it. She feared being alone because she related it in her mind to a childhood incident where her father used to be overseas, her mother had gone out of station for work, and she was left with her grandparents. And with her grandmother ill, and she and her grandfather were left alone, there were long periods when she was left alone. So that fear of being abandoned in her mind remained a trauma, so much so that she went abroad to study twice Salanki, and she ran away and came back. And first time they got a refund, luckily. The second time she made up an excuse of not being well, which could not be medically proved. So deep is can be the trauma that you really need to address where it started, what was going on. If that answers the question, when anybody comes asking for help, we don't know what it is. So the best way that I believe in is to just have a warm-up chat. And that's usually for the person to develop a sense of rapport, for me to gauge what's going on, because a lot sometimes is unspoken. So you have to read in between the lines. And also it helps me to align expectations. The person knows what to expect, what can happen. This talk would usually be followed with a shorter session for them to sample what it means. And the very first level is a feeling of relaxation. So when you talked of blocks, these could be emotional, they could be mental, they could be something they've experienced from the past. So at the very first level, they start feeling very relaxed, and they are able to then, think a little more clearly about the issue that had been bothering them.
And what is energy healing?
So even as we speak, there is free-flowing cosmic energy around us in the world, unlimited and in abundance. You see this, it's, if you call it the creative force behind everything. It could be what's moving the leaves, with the breeze. It could be what we experience when we go to a certain place and feel comfortable because we are picking up what we call the vibes. It's about feeling uneasy in the company of somebody who is, making us feel resistant or triggering us in a way we can't explain. All of this is energy. So when we are using a way to tap into that energy which is around us, anybody can do it, but there's a certain way to do it. You can meditate, you can connect with it through prayer, through chants, through reflective exercises, or through mindfulness. You are tapping into the same energy. Then what happens is you start receiving that energy like a conduit, like a channel, and then you can use it for self-healing. Because the moment in holistic healing, we believe, the moment you're able to restore the balance between the thought, your emotion, the action, and the result gets rectified immediately. So being out of balance can block that.
And you talk constantly of combining mind, emotion, and body. How do you do that?
Again, this is so, this also relates to your previous question. So there are several modalities. So let me give you an example of a gym. Whenever you visit a gym, you will find not one type of equipment. You will find many kinds, a variety, and different intensity levels, each to suit a different kind of a person. Some who are pros at it, some who like to experiment with different equipment types, and some who prefer only a certain way. But it's the skill and the expertise of the trainer who decides that, along with your own preferences individually. Similarly, you have several modalities to start this healing, to initiate this healing process, and no one single one will work for everybody. Depending on what the person is like, what the person is comfortable with, what will best suit the issue, and then the duration, that's what we decide. For example, I have many clients who are very, very practical. They don't want to know theory. They don't want to know the rationale. They say, will it work? Won't it work? How long is it going to take? How many sessions? So it's like bullet point responses to them, right? So for them, the approach is very different. You go into it because they're not going to ask questions. They're only focused on the outcome. Then there are some who are very intrigued by it. They want to know more and more and more. They're like a lot of hypothesizing. So modalities of energy healing can be Reiki, which is again using the cosmic energy. It can be pranic healing. It can be using acupressure points, which Chinese medicine is well known to have established. It can be mindfulness, meditation, which can again be of different types. And it can be understanding your energy field, which is the aura. It can be balancing your chakras, that are the meridian points. It can be using crystals like what I do. And it can also include a lot of counseling, journaling, self-reflection. But again, it depends on the person, the matter they want to address, and to what extent they're willing to indulge in this.
So you would basically, if someone comes to you, you would basically speak to them and you would see what needs addressing, and then you would guide them. And like, I would like to go back to my previous question when we spoke about energy healing. And you spoke about how energy is all around us and you just need to tap into it. And to do that, you can meditate, you can pray, and there are various ways to tap into energy. Do you think many people are aware of this nowadays?
That's a very good question, actually. I think people are aware of it, but maybe some don't know how to go about it. for most of us, our religious beliefs, our cultural beliefs and practices influence us to such an extent that we do not or are not open-minded enough to even explore anything different. Add to that the kind of cynicism or caution that people may have in trying out something new because they don't want to be taken for a ride. So that does become like the inhibit
I was
them.
just going to ask you if people are skeptical about your approach.
Many people are. And the best way to address them is just to say, come and experience it, and then it's left to you to decide.
And I mean, when we look at your approach, can it be scientifically proven? Is there any scientific evidence or logic behind it? I think that's a question that many would have.
I'm sure. Yes.
For example, you speak a lot about auras, energy, and changing your aura. Could you tell us about this?
Sure. So we have an energy field which can be measured. Just like our thoughts and emotions, as I said, have electrical impulses that can be measured and captured. The MRI does that. A machine called EEG, electroencephalograph, does that by looking at your brain activity. As an example, think of the lie detector, the polygraph. What happens when they ask questions which the person knows is honestly answering and is fabricating? It shows up, right? So that's the connection. Now, many years ago, I think it might have been about 70 years or so, 75 years ago, there was a Russian scientist who came up with something which is called Kirlian photography, which is named after him. When used, it is able to capture your aura. So aura is the energetic field which will show up when you use Kirlian photography with a color. It could be one color, it could be a combination of colors, and it will also show you what's happening with your 7 basic chakras. Now, based on that, you can make out what's going on in the person's life, whether the person is stressed, whether the person's positive or prone to brooding or overthinking, whether the person's practical or creative, whether the person is spiritual or not, or whether the person is facing any issue in your life. And then we try to validate this by looking at all of that. So that's what the aura is. It is measurable and it has a scientific base.
What is an aura?
It's an energy, it's your energy field, which will not change, like your core personality. So we say there is a core aura and there is a daily aura. The daily aura may fluctuate from time to time based on your thoughts and emotions. And when I say this, think Google search telling you 64,000 thoughts a day, 64,000 plus. And 90% of them repetitive, 80% negative. So imagine the impact of this on our aura. So even if we speak and we were to use the Kirlian photography or, the aura scanning machines, if I think of a happy thought, right, my aura would change. It would expand. If I start thinking of, oh my God, what next? How do I manage this? I'm overwhelmed. My aura would start shrinking in size. Now, in healing, we say when you have a very constricted aura, right, think like this. If you're physically, confined to a space like this, your spiritual, internal, emotional immunity is low. So that's when you'll get affected by whatever's going on around you. You can't tolerate it. You're like on the threshold and you're about to break or snap. Everything is getting to you. But when you're happy, internally balanced, your aura is expanded. And then, something happens, you get late, something doesn't go right. It's okay. We can take it in our stride.
You're more positive.
You're more positive.
And how do you change your aura? Let's say a person has low energy or a weak aura. How do you change that? Because this is something you speak about.
Yes. So the aura, the daily aura will change. And with time, you can work on your changing the more chronic issues as well and patterns as well.
And may I interrupt you?
Sure.
Is it possible to really deal with or address underlying issues by changing your aura?
Right. To an extent, yes, but let me address the first part
Sure.
and then connect with this, if I may. So how do you change the aura? Now, here's where neuroscience helps us. There are three basic principles that I like to use. One, that your mind is not capable of holding two opposing thoughts together. One has to be pushed out for the other to come in. For instance, if I'm now, really feeling a bit low, and you say to me, Archana, snap out of it. Come on, be positive. I can't. It's not like a switch on, switch off. But when deliberately done, one thought can replace the other. I can divert my attention. I can do something that's therapeutic for me. It could be cooking, it could be music, it could be some other physical engaging activity. When I do that, not my mind is here, right? And less on what is bothering me and more on what I'm doing.
So
but that
in
requires
a sense, you're more mindful.
Yes, exactly. That would be definitely one practice. And then I'm focusing more, but that's a deliberate effort. But when done with time, it allows me to stay in the here and now. It also raises my vibration. So one thing definitely is to watch your thoughts before they get you down. The second basic principle of neuroscience that I like to always use and apply is that thought follows thought. Before we know it, if I'm thinking about my day ahead and how difficult it's going to be and how I'm going to be so challenged, before I know it, one thought leads to another, the third thought is similar, the fourth thought is similar, and I've formed a chain of thoughts that's now very difficult to break. Which is also why when you're treating people who are in the throes of depression, clinical depression, the first thing they're given is like a band-aid, mood stabilizers, so that once their mood stabilizes, they're able to think in a slightly different way and have different perspectives, right? So that's how the aura can be changed with certain practices. Another one that that allow me to say this is a mindfulness practice, which again emphasizes how our mind cannot hold many things together, though we like to multitask.
So you've been doing this for a very long time, like you said, over 30 years. How would you say you transform lives? Is there any specific example you can give of how you've transformed or helped someone?
Right. So let me give you two very different examples. One is of a young student who is now going to appear for A-levels. Because of some very intense childhood difficulties, which were real, not perceived, she has gone into a shell and would hardly speak, was not forthcoming, so was always dismissed by others. So this complex grew in her. And when she was not able to perform and was lagging behind in studies, even the teachers felt that she was a slow learner. So this thought over time has got reinforced in her mind that she's not good enough, that she cannot cope. Now, to bring her out of this involved a lot of work over 9 to 10 months before we could see any visible difference. But there were these small encouraging signs. When she was a little more open with me, she was able to confide in me, not take any suggestion in a personal way, not react at home, was willing to come out and mingle with the others instead of staying shut in her room. Right? Not coming out with intense emotional statements like, I hate this, I dislike this, I don't want to go to school, or, So those were some encouraging signs. So a lot of modalities had to be used with her. Mindfulness, reflection, counseling, journaling, depending on what phase she was going through from time to time. And general support, saying unconditionally there with you. We are not here to judge you. You are accepted the way you are, right? And this also helped her to stop judging herself. You see, because she's judging herself based on the approval or disapproval she's getting from the people around her, close to her, who matter. So this was one example which took time. They believed in the process. They trusted me. I'm very grateful for that. And we are able to see good results. The other would be, the example I'm going to tell you about is of a middle-level manager in a reputed company in the country. Over time, so he's very cutthroat competitive. But at this point of time, when I met him, he was feeling very bogged down. He had 2 school-going children, their future education. He was living with his parents who were now getting a little older and more, their condition was becoming more debilitating. His wife had stopped working. So he felt very pressurized. In that way, see, whatever your strength is, any strength overuse can become a weakness. At this point of time, he was rigidly trying to do what he had always done because that's the only way he can control the situation. So to get him to see another perspective without feeling threatened, without feeling cornered, meant working with his emotions, meant telling him it's safe to let go. It's safe to explore another perspective. You don't have to necessarily forego or give up anything. People are not going to ridicule you because they need not know what you're doing. So this fear of trying something different was very closely linked, in his case, with the fear of failure, not getting it right. So over time, the engagement with him went on for about 5.5 months. But we came to the point where he was able to explore different methods in his business development and delegating to his team and letting go of control, not micromanaging. And that made a difference to his personal life too.
All right. So you help people in relationships to
Yes.
achieve fulfilling relationships, and you also guide people pertaining to career. And you've mentored and coached many leaders in various organizations. How do you do this?
So for relationship healing, so there's always an emotional issue to be addressed. Like this client of mine who is Canada-based, but who is up in arms with everybody. Her parents did this to her husband did this to her in-laws were like this. So she's now, very defiant. Now I'm not going to listen to anybody. But that's getting more and more strained relationships. So there's always has to be a band-aid for any emotion before you start digging deeper. And this emotional band-aid has to be non-judgmental, has to be unconditional. Because to anybody, what I perceive becomes my reality. I'm not wearing my specs right now, but if I were to give it to you, it's not what's going to help you to see clearly, it's a different lens. Right. So it's a perception and a perspective that each one brings to their life. And to change that is not always easy, especially when it's very deep-rooted. Mm-hmm. How does this connect with relationships? This is a different relationship, but even in a marriage or in a business partnership, to be able to first see how my energy, my thoughts may be reflected in what the other person's responses are, requires a level of objectivity, which we have to strive to get. Once that is established, then you can say, okay, this is what the person is doing, but this is what I'm doing. There could be forgiveness involved. There could be communication dynamics that needs to be improved. There has to be different perspectives, but it requires the onus to come back to me. Mm-hmm. I cannot control what my partner in business or in life or in any other relationship will say or do, but am I willing to take that first step and say, I'm ready to do this for my own sake? And that brings about a change in the energy. Even in the case of a girl who had married against her family's wishes and had a child, but the parents were still not willing to accept them. She was, of course, very, very, disturbed by this. But what helped in her prayers is like the beautiful metta meditation. May you be happy, may I be happy. May you be healthy, may I be healthy. So for her to release her guilt of having let down her parents and wishing them well, keeping all the anger and resentment that she felt aside. And that really brought about a beautiful change in the relationship.
Would you say that that is also something to do with energy?
It definitely is. And giving you an example of energy, maybe you can relate to this. If I have been walking in the middle of a crowd and I could feel somebody's eyes just pouring into my back and I turn back, and 9 times out of 10, you will catch the eyes of the person who was looking at you. May not be intentional. They may just be staring, maybe absent-mindedly, but that's what energy does. You feel it.
You feel it.
You feel it.
And who can come to you?
Actually, it's people of all types. So if there is you talked about career, if there's any career guidance required, I would try to bring in a psychology-based assessment of where they are, where they want to be, what's the gap and how it can be best covered. So we work towards a definite goal, which is a little clearer in case of professional guidance. If it's a relationship, it's to find out what the issue is. Maybe if I have a chance to talk to people concerned separately, like at one point of time, I had an entire family coming to me, and I'm very grateful for their trust, because I had to be so careful not to let one word from another conversation slip into this one. So then to bring them all together, to align them. So it could be a family member, it could be a student, as I have told you, it could be a homemaker starting off on a second career. It's actually anyone and everyone. And the reason is because we talk of stress nowadays, that everything is related to stress. And stress by definition is an emotional reaction or a response. When something is not in my control, when something I'm scared would happen, right? And that affects me with a physical symptom. I could have weak bowel syndrome, I could have, or irritable bowel, I can have butterflies in my stomach, I can have pain in the back, I can get a throbbing headache, right? So all of these, weakness in my legs. So think of all these as a three-legged race. You must have run that in your school.
Sure.
You want to race ahead, but something is holding you back. So when you look at it in a holistic way, mental, emotional, it could be a deep-rooted belief or an experience that is holding you back from what you do. And it's a matter of identifying, addressing it, and then bringing about the alignment, because in a natural way, we are made to heal.
Sure. And also, Archana, you just did speak about how stress impacts many people nowadays. Do you think that stress, since you talk about mind, emotion, and body, aligning all of them and working in connection, do you think being stressed out really impacts or misaligns your energy?
Stress, again, is an energy, it's an emotion that you experience in a physical way or as a mental pattern, but usually by a physical symptom, right? From all that we said. It also lowers your immunity so that you are more prone to illnesses.
So
right?
would you say stress is a negative energy?
It's an energy that gets you down.
Sure.
Definitely. So, you know, when we talk of positive and negative, since we also talked about emotions that are energy in motion, your thought and emotions are like that. The physical symptoms may not be very different. So when you're excited, you will have a racing pulse, faster heartbeat, right? But the mood that you have is uplifting, as against something that you're very worried about, that you do not want to happen. And while the same physical symptoms are there, the emotion will be your best guide. So stress can do that to you, yes.
And before we end the conversation, I'd like to know, nowadays, many people rely on science and logic and being practical, like you said, some of your clients are. So, and you did say that some people are skeptical and doubt your approach. How do you really, like you mentioned in your website, how do you really combine Western science and Eastern wisdom to really help someone?
So there are two ways that I would do it. And I'm thinking right now of my client from the IT, very logic-driven, believes only in physics formulas, who has now come after 1.5 years to saying, I've come for my spa moment. Sure. So the relaxation that he feels is something which he's trying to understand, right? But he may not always be able to. The way we combine it, as I said, I use a bit of psychology. So I'm a behavior psychologist as well as a coach. And when I say behavior, we are looking at visible actions through which we are trying to understand what a person is doing. Like, I could look visibly stressed. I may not say it. And when you ask me, what's up with you? I'm like, no, everything is fine, but you know. So my actions are always speaking louder than the words. So sometimes it's reading that and bringing in that understanding. And when I make them, ask them certain questions, it's a validation. Sometimes I may give them a questionnaire. That's again blending the Eastern and the Western concepts together. Using research from science, using what we call in healing and psychotherapy, we also call something called a deep level thinking. It's like using in problem solving your 5 why questions. Why? But you only do it when the people are balanced energetically, emotionally. There is also something which is where you say cognitive behavioral therapy, where you ask them to self-reflect, do a lot of journaling, right? It's used a lot in anger management, stress management. So what are you feeling? Pour your heart out. There's no editing. There is no judgment. And once it's done, you feel relief, right? Anger management also suggests that you burn the paper to bits. So all of these are a combination of various modalities and approaches put together. And one of them would surely work with somebody or the other.
And would you say that Eastern wisdom is still so relevant?
I believe it is. I truly believe it is. For example, and our conditioning is, even if we don't realize it, in our food habits, in our, in the way we think, a lot of influence comes from our family. People would first, it's like, again, in psychology, we say you start here, you're born here. Then you grow up asking why, because, when you go out of your family, so everything that's done in your family becomes your first reference point. So when you go to school and you say, no, I don't like this because that's not the way things are done in my house. But then when you start looking at things and you say, why not? When you come back home and say, I saw this happening in school, my friend's house, they were doing this. Why not here? So depending on the response you get, you either question more with a view to understand, or you learn to shut up.
All right.
And then that's how the cycle goes, but you do come back to your roots. Yes.
All right. Before we end the conversation, Archana, how can anyone reach out to you?
So I have my website called www.ekam.com. That is my number. I'm on LinkedIn as Archana Law. I am on Instagram with the name of Ekam, and I have a Facebook page with Ekam, and that has my contact details as well.
All right. Thank you so much for this interesting conversation. Thank you everyone for watching. So I will leave Archana's website details in the description box below. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Do remember, if you like my content, to like, comment, subscribe, and obviously share my content as well with your friends and colleagues and family. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you very much, Alanki. I appreciate your time. Thank you.